Have you ever found yourself in a tricky situation and wondered, what's the right thing to do here? How do we even figure out what's right and what's wrong? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're talking about ethics, our shared human quest to build a kind of moral compass. So let's just jump right in with a classic. Imagine you're walking down the street and you see a wallet. You pick it up, it's packed with cash, but there's no ID inside. Nobody saw you. So what do? Do you keep it? Do you turn it into the police, knowing it might never find its owner? See, there's no obvious answer here. And how you even start to think about this question, that's your personal ethics in action. This is why this stuff isn't just for philosophers in ivory towers, it's for every single one of us.
Okay, so how do we move past just a gut feeling in situations like that? How do we build a guide that's a little more reliable? Well, that's exactly where the formal study of ethics comes into play. You can think of it as humanity's big, ongoing project to create some solid tools and frameworks to help us navigate these messy moral situations.
At its core, that's what ethics, or moral philosophy, if you want to get formal, is all about. It's a systematic way of looking at how we behave and trying to figure out a basis for what's right and what's wrong. It's not about memorizing some rulebook. It's really about training ourselves to think critically and ask deeper questions about who we want to be and what kind of world we want to create.
And this is why it matters so much, right? Because every single day, we're making choices. Little ones, big ones, and so many of them have an ethical ripple effect on ourselves and the people around us. Ethics gives us a way to make those decisions more consciously, more thoughtfully, instead of just running on autopilot.
So if we break it down, ethics really has a few key jobs. On a personal level, it's a guide for our own lives, a framework for our conduct. Intellectually, it's like a workout for your brain. It sharpens your critical thinking. And on a bigger scale, it gives us a shared language and set of tools to tackle huge, complicated problems that we all face together as a society.
Okay, so how do we actually start to analyze these problems? Well, for centuries, philosophers have developed different ways to approach them. We're going to look at three of the biggest ones. The best way to think about them is like having three different lenses you can put on to examine any ethical dilemma from a new angle. So here's our roadmap for this section. We're going to explore the lens of virtue, which is all about character, then the lens of duty, which is about actions and rules, and finally, the lens of rights, which focuses on what we're all entitled to. Let's start with the first one. First up is virtue ethics. Now, this approach is ancient, going all the way back to Greek thinkers like Aristotle. The main idea here is that being a good person isn't about following a list of rules. It's about building a good character, cultivating virtues like honesty, courage, compassion, and justice. This quote just nails the whole mindset. A virtue ethicist looking at that wallet on the street wouldn't just ask, what's the rule? They'd ask, what would an honest person do? Or what action reflects the kind of compassionate and just person I want to be? The focus flips from the act itself to the actor. All right, next we have a totally different way of looking at things. This is deontology, and it's all about duty. This viewpoint, which is famously tied to the philosopher Immanuel Kant, says that certain actions are just plain right or wrong in and of themselves, no matter what happens as a result. Morality is about sticking to your obligations and following universal rules. So for deontologists, a rule like, you shall not steal, is absolute. It's a universal law. Looking at that wallet, they might say that taking money that isn't yours is a form of stealing, and therefore it's wrong, period. It doesn't matter if you're poor and need the money, the act itself is what's judged. And this slide really gets at the key difference here. Deontology, the duty-based approach, focuses on the action. Is it right or wrong on its own? Its biggest rival is something called consequentialism, which argues that no, the only thing that matters is the outcome. The right action is the one that produces the best results. You can probably already see how this creates some major disagreements in ethics. And that brings us to our third and final lens, rights-based ethics. This framework argues that the whole point of morality is to protect the fundamental inalienable rights that every single person has. You know, things like the right to life, to liberty, to be treated with respect. From this perspective, an action is moral if it respects the rights of everyone involved.
So we have our three lenses: virtue, duty, and rights. That's all great in theory, but how do they actually help us when the stakes are high and things get really complicated? Let's take these ideas out for a spin in the real world.
We're going to dive into a case from bioethics.
This is a field that's all about the tough moral questions that come up with new medical technologies and life sciences. It's a place where doctors, scientists, and patients have to make incredibly difficult, sometimes life-or-death decisions.
So here's the scenario. It's a nightmare situation. A doctor has only one ventilator left. Two patients come in at the same time, and both of them will die without it. The doctor has to choose. How in the world do they decide? There's no easy answer, but let's see how our ethical lenses can at least help us structure the problem.
Look at how each lens frames the problem in a completely different way. The virtue lens asks us to think about the character of the decision maker. What does it mean to be a compassionate doctor in this moment? The duty lens searches for a clear, fair, universal rule, like first come, first served. And the rights lens forces us to ask about the patients. Do they both have an equal right to life, and therefore an equal right to this resource? Notice that none of these gives us a simple solution. In fact, they might pull us in opposite directions. And that is the real work of ethics, learning how to think through these tensions.
So after going through these frameworks and this tough dilemma, let's zoom back out. What have we actually accomplished here? We've started to build a basic toolkit for moral reasoning. So let's reflect on what that really gives you.
Because here is the most important takeaway of all. The goal of ethics isn't to turn you into a person who has all the right answers memorized. It's to help you become someone who knows how to ask better, deeper, more thoughtful questions when you're faced with a tough choice.
And when you learn to ask those better questions, you gain all these incredible tools. You literally enhance your ability to think critically, you get frameworks to lean on when you have to make a hard call, you get the skills to analyze really complex social debates, and maybe most importantly, it becomes a path to understanding yourself, your own values, your own compass, a lot more clearly.
Look, we've only just scratched the surface today. We've given you a map of some of the key ideas in ethics and a compass for how to think about them. But the real journey, the one where you apply these tools to your own life and to the world you see around you, that journey starts now. So, the only question left is, where will you go?